Thank you, Dr. Bird. Well, this is normally the moment in which I would introduce the keynote speaker, but they've asked me to give the keynote speech today, so that seems kind of unnecessary. And I think it's appropriate that I give the address this year since we're all starting our freshman years together. Obviously, I'm using the term freshman pretty broadly, but it's all of our first years. But clearly, this is not my first freshman year. Like many of the others here, I was once sitting where you're sitting. For me, it was 32 years ago. Now, I know when you're 18, 32 seems like a very, very long time ago, but to me, it seems like just yesterday. I was from a small town in New Jersey and went to school in Southern Virginia, so I was very far from home and had only one other person from my high school who attended the university. I initially tried to meet people and participated in all the Welcome Week activities. I distinctly remember seeing the student government president make a presentation and thought, he must be special to be chosen from over 20,000 students to be their leader. I'll come back to that point later. The first quarter, classes started, and things went really, really well and really, really bad. Here's what I did right. I went to class every day, always. And I focused on getting off to a good start academically and getting the most out of my education. If I thought I needed to study 6 hours for a test, I studied 8. And that first quarter GPA that I got was strong enough that helped me move forward and continue to be successful, while I will say many of my friends did not have that same level of success the first quarter, and bringing up a 1.0 GPA is a little difficult, as they could well tell you. Now, here's what I did wrong. I did nothing else except for go to class and study. For the most part, I stopped meeting people. I certainly never went on a date. My friend from high school was the first runner-up in the Miss Teenage New Jersey pageant, and for some reason, people were more interested in meeting her and getting to know her and had no desire to have me tag along, so she wasn't really all that helpful. Overall, I was lonely and I was miserable. What I should have done was get involved. I almost joined the rugby team and decided not to at the last minute. I've always regretted that decision. Not that rugby's that important, but there are many opportunities and many organizations I could have joined, and I should have got involved with something. Now, one of the best things for me, though I frankly did not understand at the time that I was so far away from home and had no car, so I had no way to leave. And I couldn't get away on the weekends, and I was forced to stay and battle through that difficult transition. And I started to do just that. I started to make some friends in my classes and in my residence hall. One I remember in particular was Eddie. Eddie and his roommate were the only two African-American students in a residence hall that was almost entirely white. So frankly, Eddie was a little bit cautious. Every time I saw him, I said hello, and he said nothing. This went on for many weeks, but I never stopped saying hello, and finally one day he said hello back. Then we started to talk. Some of my best conversations in college were with Eddie. We discussed issues of race, culture, politics, music, sports, and just about everything else. As the year went on, we all became a closer group of friends in that residence hall, and our discussion groups got bigger. We went to social events and even formed a softball team together. Many of them I still stay in contact with to this day, including Eddie. While this was a positive step, I was only limiting my interactions to a small group of people, and I was not involved on campus. Before my spring quarter, my father told me I needed to join a fraternity before I came home from the summer. It was clear it was not a suggestion. It's not that a Greek organization was right for everyone, but he understood I needed to get involved, and enough time had passed, and that this would be a good fit for me. So I pledged a fraternity that spring, and I started to meet more people and got even more involved, and college got much, much better. I even started dating. While that went well most of the time, I'll be honest, it did not always go perfectly. Once when looking for a date for fraternity formal, I got rejected by 12 women in a row. Now, you may ask why I remember the exact number, since this is something that most people would choose to forget. I know I certainly would. I remember because my so-called friends in the residence hall had a pool going on how long it would take me to find a date and whether I'd find a date at all. Yes, some of them were betting I was undateable, and these were my friends. Now, I told this story in a speech recently, but here's the part I did not share. The 13th young woman I asked, who did say yes, was an attractive and very nice young woman named Alice, and I had probably my most enjoyable date in college with her. And after the formal was over, we went back to the residence hall, and all those guys in the betting pool got to meet Alice. Why? Because they were hanging around with nothing to do on a Saturday night. I'm not sure who won the pool, but in my mind, I always felt like the winner. By the way, Alice does not know she was the 13th person I asked, so if we could keep that just between us, that would be great. Beyond dating and my involvement with the fraternity, I got involved in other things as well. I was elected to represent the business school as a student government senator in the fall of my sophomore year. However, again, things did not always go perfectly. In the spring of 1985, I decided to run for SGA treasurer. I got beat, and I got beat bad. It was right after Ronald Reagan had trounced Walter Mondale the 1984 presidential election, and I used to say, I got Mondale beat. However, that's not exactly fair to Mr. Mondale because my margin of defeat was larger than his. Now, a couple weeks later, I was elected President Pro Tem of the Senate. I think I largely got elected because they felt badly for me because, after all, I just got Mondale beat. And the position is pretty meaningless. The President Pro Tem of the Senate just fills in for the President or Vice President if something happens to them, which never happens, except for in 1985 when the Vice President abruptly resigned and I became Vice President of the Student Government Association. A year later, I was elected President of the Student Government Association and beat that same individual who beat me for treasurer the year before. Now, that was not my only involvement. I got involved with other clubs and organizations, but I also went to a lot of events. I went to plays ranging from the Cherry Orchard to the musical Hair, and trust me, that is a big range. I heard speakers ranging from Democratic Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, to Republican Senator Strom Thurmond, and that was a big range as well. And I think that's a good thing. I saw music performances, including a memorable one by the jazz band, and I went to a bunch of athletic events. I also played 7 different intramural sports. Some I was pretty good at. I'm a mean inner tube water polo player, and some I clearly was not. Overall, I tried to take advantage of as many out-of-class opportunities as I could. Back to my academics. For a long time, I continued the same approach I started with academically. I went to class, though now I was more comfortable studying 6 hours when I thought I needed to study 6 hours. I worked ahead and never in 4 years studied past midnight. I always followed Dr. Bird's advice. I kept up and allowed myself to work only when I was at my best. Beyond my accounting courses, I took advantage of electives and general education class to take things I thought were interesting. I took an English class on satire, which I found I love to read, but I cannot write. I took a political philosophy class where I learned about Plato, Aristotle, and Machiavelli. I took a marriage and family class that was not only interesting, but I made some of my best friends in college in that class. And my favorite was the Civil War history class. I liked that class so much that 2 years after I was enrolled in the class, I went to the class because they were introducing the new university athletic director. After they did the introductions, I could have left, but the professor got up there and said, I'm doing the lecture on Stonewall Jackson. And I said, oh, I remember this one. It's really good. I'm staying. So yes, I stayed to listen to the same lecture twice in a classroom because I thought it was that interesting. This continued until the winter quarter of my senior year. I already had a job and decided my grades probably weren't that important anymore. I did not know that I would later leave accounting and go to graduate school and all of a sudden my grades would become important again, but that's another story. Regardless, it was obvious to me at this point that I was not like the rest of these students. I was clearly very, very smart, and I really did not need to go to class. So I stopped going to class regularly, or much at all. Guess what this little experiment proved? I'm not that smart. I got the worst GPA of my college career, and I missed on some valuable learning experiences. I regret that as well, and I never tried it again. So, based on these experiences, what would be my advice? Well, one thing I should point out from the beginning, every year I watch the Oscars, and someone wins, and they point out how, for all the dreamers out there, if you just dream and work hard, you can be anything you want to be. You can't. None of us can. If that was true, I'd be beginning my 28th year as a starting middle linebacker for the New York Giants, and there are so many reasons why that's not possible. Now, some of you may find this depressing, but I don't. I think that's a good thing, because the only way that would be true is if we were all exactly the same, with the same skills and ability, the same passions, and we're not. We're different, and that's what makes the world so great. You all have strengths. You all have skills and abilities, and you all find your passions. But you have to find those out for yourself because no one else is going to be able to tell you that. And college is the best time to explore that, but you've got to be all in. If you do, you'll find out more about yourself, your skills, your abilities, your passions, and we are all here for you first and foremost. And there's a lot available for support at Winthrop as you move through this journey, but we need you to take advantage of those opportunities. We can't force you. You've got to be all in. You also need to go to class, just as Dr. Bird mentioned, and there are 2 reasons for it. You're all capable of succeeding here. You would not be here if you were not. and I've been a professor for over 20 years, and I've had students consistently who were able to do it. But what I did find in all those years, I did an analysis every year, not going to class costs you about 1 letter grade. Now that doesn't sound like much, but that's the difference between a 3.5 and a 2.5, and when you decide to go to graduate school, that will matter. It's also the difference between a 2.5 and a 1.5, and that's the difference between finishing easily and not finishing at all. It matters a lot. The other thing is you never know what you will learn and what will inspire you. I know a lot of people who found their passion in a general education course outside of their major or an elective. Dr. Bird is absolutely right on this point. I have a sister who is a hotel and restaurant management major who's now a school psychologist because of a psychology class she took as a general education class as a freshman. Next, get involved. You're going to be more successful if you get involved. All the research indicates that. Again, you will find out more about yourself if you get involved as well. I became a professor of sport management in large part because my experiences as a student representative to the athletic board as an undergrad. It helped me find my passion, and when I decided to change careers, I knew what I wanted to do. It also opens up other opportunities for you. After college, I got to work in the governor's office in Richmond, Virginia as part of the Governor's Fellows Program. I got that only because I was involved. So even after college, it continued to pay off for me. And it's actually not as hard as it seems. Remember when I talked about the student government president who I thought was so special because he was chosen from among 20,000 students? I realized when I won, I wasn't chosen from 20,000 students, I was chosen from 2. That's a coin flip. I won because more people picked heads than tails. It's not as hard to get involved as you may think. And I know it's difficult sometimes. You have to manage your time, you have work and other responsibilities. But you have your whole life to play video games. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. You got 261 days this year, about 261 days during the next 3 years. Take advantage of every single one of them. Soak everything out of it that you can. Related to that, stay on campus as much as you can and stay in Rock Hill. Don't run home every weekend. I was lucky. I didn't have that option. Many of you do, but I encourage you to pretend that you're 8 hours away from home and stay here anyway. Go to speeches, go to games, go to plays, go to performances, hang out with your friends here at the university. Take advantage of this opportunity. Take time to meet people. As Ms. Bingham said, you'll find friends who last a lifetime, and don't be afraid to say hello to the person who doesn't immediately say hello back. And take risks. My dad used to always ask me a question whenever I was deciding whether to do something. It's what is the worst thing that can happen? That question is really good because it keeps you from doing stupid things. If you drink and drive, you can die, so I don't do that. But I may ask someone out on a date, they could say no. I could run for election, I could lose, those things happened. All I really got out of it was a bruised ego, and that's not really that bad. But if I was not willing to ask out the 13th woman, I would not have had that date with Alice, and that would have been a shame. Much worse, I would not have met my wife many years later and married her, and that would have greatly affected my life in an extremely negative way. And if I had not run for treasurer and then risked defeat just a couple weeks later when I ran for president pro temp, I never would have had those experiences as vice president and president, and that would have been a real loss. And here's a confession. Less than a year ago, I saw the job for the president position at Winthrop University. My wife asked me, are you going to apply? I said, yes. She said, do you think you have much of a chance? I said, no. I said, this is a great job. They're going to get a lot of great applicants. It's going to be a competitive process, but I'm going to try because this is worth it, and I hope I have that opportunity. So yeah, the worst may happen. You may not get it, but the best can happen too. The most successful people in life have failed and failed a lot. The difference is they have the grit and determination to battle through the failures until they're successful. I encourage you to do the same. Finally, as Dr. Bird said, have fun. These should be the 4 of the best years of your life, and you should take advantage of all of those opportunities. And my advice to me as a freshman president would be pretty much the same. I've got to be all in too. I've got to take advantage of every opportunity that's available on this campus and at this university, and that's what my plan is. So best of luck. We're about to start an incredible journey together. Thank you.